Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 105, What Podcasters Are Thankful For. Thank you for joining me for the Audacity to Podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis, and this is a how-to podcast about podcasting and using Audacity. It's where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. And this episode is brought to you in part by GoToMeeting with HD Faces. More on that in a few minutes. I have had a wonderful Thanksgiving with my family and some friends as well, and I hope that you took this opportunity, the break from the podcast schedule and all of that, to also enjoy time with your family or friends. And even if you're in a country that doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving like the United States does, I hope you took some time to be thankful and to consider, what are you thankful for? And I know many of you did that, and you emailed your responses to me because I asked previously to have you tell me, what are you thankful for in podcasting? And I got a bunch of responses, great responses from you guys to share with you today, and some things I'm going to share with you that are stuff that we as podcasters are thankful for. You're going to hear equipment, software, principles, ideas, achievements. It's a great list from some great people who have podcasts and who listen to podcasts about what they're thankful for in podcasting. So thank you so much, everyone, for sending that in, calling that in, writing that in. I really appreciate that. Hey, before I get into this content, I want to tell you that New Media Expo is in January 2013, and it looks like an awesome conference coming up. If you can make it to New Media Expo, I would love to see you there. I have an affiliate link where you can register over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/NMX. That's the hashtag also for New Media Expo, NMX. And if you use the promo code AN20P, you'll get 20% off. Now that promo code does expire the day after I'm recording this podcast. So it expires on November 27th, 2012. But if you look at the blog post and show notes for this episode over at theaudacitypodcast.com/105, you'll see I'll update it with a new coupon code there, just in case there's another code that comes out and you can register and save for New Media Expo. I will be there. I might even be doing a live podcast from New Media Expo. So it would be great to see you there. Great to meet you, and I'll be a part of the Podcast Awards. And speaking of the Podcast Awards, thank you so much for voting for my podcasts and for your favorite podcasts in the Podcast Awards. We won't know the results until the actual award ceremony, which is on January 7th, live from New Media Expo. So I and my wife, Jenny, will be there at New Media Expo and representing several of our podcasts, as well as doing some other cool things like CES. We'll be covering there with the Tech Podcast Network, which I'm a proud member of, and so much more exciting stuff is coming. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to meet many of you. If we haven't met yet, please let me know if you're going to New Media Expo. I'd love to meet up with you, and we could sit next to each other in a session or something, or we can have a great time over at New Media Expo. It will be an awesome conference. It's the only New Media Expo for 2013. They're not doing the West Coast and East Coast thing, just one. So if you're going to make it to one in 2013, then you've only got one choice. So I'd love to see you at New Media Expo. You can go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/NMX to register for that through my affiliate link. And I'll have a new promo code in the show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/105. So let's get into some of the things that you are thankful for in podcasting. I've got a bunch of responses from you, and then some things that I'm thankful for as well. And this is in no particular order, but Erik Fisher from Beyond the To-Do List tweeted, "I'm thankful for all the people who are learning in the journey of productivity and creativity with my show." Erik hosts this podcast that's part of Noodle Mix Network called Beyond the To-Do List, and it's about personal productivity and being creative with that. And he's learning a lot with that. I'm learning a lot as a listener to the podcast as well, and many other people are too. And podcasting really is a journey. If you build relationships with your listeners and as you learn more about the content you're sharing, you see that it really is a journey, and podcasting can often take you that direction or take you different directions in your journey. Dan Lavoie, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's Golden Saucer Guy on Twitter. He said, I'm thankful for the podcasting community that is coaching me in getting into it as a hobby. Dan doesn't have a podcast yet, but he listens to podcasts about podcasting. He's listening to this one. I assume he's listening to the other podcasts about podcasting, like from Dave Jackson, Ray Ortega, Cliff Ravenscraft, and the others. And no doubt that's really inspiring him. And so he's thankful for that. And I'm glad to be a part of that, and as a small part. Professor Allen from the Book Guys show said, I'm thankful for being able to talk regularly with fellow book lovers and authors. That's awesome. When you start a podcast about books, that just opens up all kinds of opportunities that you can talk to the people who wrote those books and talk to people who love those books too. It opens up huge potential for so many things that you can do and people that you can connect with, and the chance to talk to the author of a book because you're talking about their book. It's just incredible what podcasting can do for you, for other people, and that it is doing for people like Professor Allen from the Book Guys show. Before I go on to my next several things, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsor for this episode of the Audacity to Podcast, GoToMeeting with HD Faces from Citrix. Meeting in person is great because you get to see facial expressions from people. You can express yourself very subtly, and you don't have to say everything. You can just be nodding, or you can express in your face whether you're pleased or displeased and any of this. And this helps us communicate and helps us understand each other. But when you're trying to meet with people in different locations, you miss all of this. So that's why I recommend GoToMeeting with HD Faces, which allows you to meet face-to-face with clients, colleagues, and coworkers, no matter where they are or no matter where you are. You can now even host a meeting from your iPad. So wherever you are with an internet connection, bring your iPad along and host a meeting from it, or you can host a meeting from a computer. People can join through phone calls, through iPads, iPhones, through their computers. It's really simple for you and for your participants. You can even share your screen with them, share control of your computer with them so they can control things, or you can control things on their computer. It's really great how GoToMeeting works. So simple and yet so powerful, and makes it so easy to collaborate with your team. Try GoToMeeting free for 30 days. Don't wait. For this special offer, visit gotomeeting.com, click the Try It Free button, and use the promo code PODCAST. Remember to use the promo code PODCAST. And thank you, Citrix, for your support. Now, moving on, Mike Dell from Geek of the North podcast tweeted saying, I'm thankful I get to work with such a great company in podcasting, Blueberry, and all the friends I've made in podcasting. Mike Dell is one of the tech support people that works with Blueberry, and Blueberry, as you probably know, provides so many wonderful services to podcasters. They have the Blueberry podcasting stats system, which, by the way, brand new update to that, huge update. It's really incredible what they're doing. So if you haven't logged into your Blueberry stats, check them out. It's an incredible update that they have there. And Blueberry also creates the PowerPress plugin for podcasters. That's the best way to turn your blog into a podcast website with their PowerPress plugin. And they also have things like the Raw Voice company helps you get sponsors for your podcast. Like that's how GoToMeeting sponsored this episode, is through my relationship with Raw Voice. And also they host the Tech Podcast Network, which I'm a member of, and many other things like that. So Blueberry, fantastic company. And it's so awesome that Mike Dell gets to work with them. So I can understand why he's so thankful to be working with them and really helping shape this vein of podcasting and enable people to podcast. Jeremiah Miller from Chunks of Wisdom said, I'm thankful for the Audacity to Podcast and all of your help, referring to me. So, and I've received that response from several people too, and I'm really glad to be able to help you guys, and I'm glad that it is helpful. I'd hate it if the Audacity podcast wasn't helpful. Anna Sophie from Your Life, Your Success podcast wrote in with a simple one-word response for what she's thankful for in podcasting: community. And as simple of a response as that is, that's a huge thing to be thankful for, because podcasting opens up so much in community with other podcasters, with listeners, with meeting people that you would have never met before if you weren't podcasting, and developing these relationships with people and finding a community, sometimes creating a community based on your content. Community is so huge in podcasting and definitely a big thing to be thankful for. Angela from Podcast Goddess sent in this voicemail of what she's thankful for.
Hi, Daniel. This is Angela from Podcast Goddess, where our mission is to support passionate, purpose-driven podcasting women. I'm thankful for the internet in general. I'm ex-gen, so I grew up with really pre-internet expectations of what work and life should look like. I'm thankful to have worked in tech, so I could watch all of that stuff just get blown away by this amazing sea change and watch it all grow and change and break all the rules. I'm thankful every day to the fantastic new thinkers who are creating these amazing opportunities for people. I'm hugely thankful for podcasters and weirdly too for Audible.com, who supports us all so much. And it reassures me daily that I'm not the only weird, geeky, spoken word audiophile in the world the way I thought I was when I was growing up. I'm thankful to the people who believe that podcasting is its own animal, this flexible, fantastic, astounding creature that's capable of being anything we can dream it to be, take us anywhere we want to choose, grow any place we want to grow it. I'm thankful to the listeners who love our stuff and to keep us going. I'm thankful to the podcasters whose passion to change the world or their corner of the world, to share their knowledge and entertain and inform us, drive them to the mic to share with a real deep sense of purpose that just engages with their audiences so beautifully and so authentically. Thanks to you, Daniel, for creating and having the audacity to podcast. I know it's already helped me a lot. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. May your turkey be moist, your pumpkin pie be sweet, and your dinner conversations be fabulous.
Thank you very much, Angela. My turkey was moist. Thank you so much. And some great things there. Yeah, so many things to be thankful for. And as I sat down and started trying to list things, like Angela sent me this list of things that she's thankful for, I realized there are so many things I'm thankful for. I could just do a whole episode, which I've done before. Actually, I think it was episode 22, where I talked about things that I'm thankful for in podcasting, different equipment and stuff. But so many things to be thankful for. And yeah, the internet in general. If we didn't have the internet, none of us would probably know each other. We wouldn't have podcasting. We wouldn't have social media. We wouldn't have these connections that the internet has enabled us to have with each other and to share our passions with the world. And all of this is just amazing what we can do and how we can connect with each other in podcasting. And Matthew from the Awaken Revolution sent in what he's thankful for.
Hi, Daniel. It's Matthew Lowell from the Awaken Revolution podcast, the show where we dream big, live well, and love deep. I'm most thankful for a Kismet plugin from WordPress, and I think I pronounced that right. It could be Fifi La Poo for all that I know, but it really gets rid of all that spam in your comments section, and I use that in conjunction with Disqus.com, DISQUS.com. It's a very simple, clean moderator for your comments, and it has apps for your phone so that you can check your comments and comment back right on your phone very simply. And of course, what I'm most thankful for in podcasting is Daniel J. Lewis.
Thank you, Matthew. Matt, I really appreciate your saying that. And Disqus and Akismet, yes, fantastic. I often see posts in different places on the internet where people are like, how can I stop the spam on my site? My site is just being overrun with spam comments. Akismet, which I think that's proper pronunciation, by the way. Akismet is one great way, and then also a commenting system on top of that, like Disqus or Livefire, Intense Debate, even Comment Love, all build extra protection on top of that. So, like, I get maybe one spam comment comes through per quarter. I think that's it. Of all of my websites, one spam comment every 3 months, and that's all I see. And maybe even those comments might not be spam, but they look like spam to me, so I end up removing them. So thank you, Matthew, for sending that in. And then also, right now, as I'm recording this live, which I do record the Audacity to Podcast live on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, since we're in Standard Time, that's GMT -5. Sergeant Fred Castaneda is in the chat room, and he says that he is thankful for Lon Naylor, in other words, Mr. Camtasia, and his giving to the video and e-learning and tutorial community. Yes, these people who teach us how to use these tools are fantastic. And I'm going to be relying on people like that for a particular tool that I'm going to tell you about near the end of this episode. Something very shocking I'm going to share with you of a new tool I'm going to be using. You might be shocked. You might want to hide your kids and hide your wives, but I'll save it for the end of the podcast to tell you about that. Also, Richard sent in this feedback of something he's thankful for.
This is Richard from Calgary, Naked Ape Productions at www.nakedapeprod.com. I'm just calling to let you know that what you're thankful for in podcasting, for me, would be a product called Wirecast. Great show, and look forward to listening to it again.
Wirecast is a fantastic piece of software. I haven't actually used it myself. It's pretty expensive. It retails at $500, I believe. You can check it out at theaudacitytopodcast.com/Wirecast. That is my affiliate link for them. And it's a live streaming software that allows you to make this very professional looking video when you live stream. I just use free CamTwist on my Mac computer, but Wirecast works great on, I believe it's both Windows and OS X. But it's beautiful software. It's very expensive, but what it does extremely well. So you can check that out if you're interested in it at theaudacitytopodcast.com/Wirecast. It's $495, and it is available for both Windows and OS X. And it does studio quality things that you could see out there, like you would see in network studios and network stations. Bill Hutchinson from the YWAM podcast wrote in saying, I'm thankful for the global reach that podcasting has, and that with it, there are no geographical boundaries. My personal podcast, where I share my testimony, has been downloaded in over 40 different countries, including many in the Middle East, which would not be possible without the global reach of podcasting. Thank you, Bill, for sending that in. Fantastic feedback. Yes. Have you ever looked at your stats to see what countries you are reaching? It could be 10, 20, 30, it could be 100 countries. You could be reaching almost all of the countries out there with your podcast. And just because you sit behind a microphone and record your passions, you could be reaching out to a global audience. Certainly someone probably in a country outside of yours, like Canada or maybe the United States or the United Kingdom or any place that speaks the language that you are sharing. DJ City from the Japan Experience podcast also sent this in.
Hi, I'm DJ City from the Japan Experience podcast. And to tell you what I am thankful for is that we have a medium like this. The ability to broadcast our voices across the internet and to reach people that have the same interests and the same type of niches that we all podcast about. And to be able to reach out and, give our opinions, it's a good thing.
Certainly it is a good thing. And would you have ever imagined that you'd be able to share your passions with hundreds or thousands of people if you weren't in traditional radio? It's so awesome that we can do this. And that's why I named this podcast The Audacity to Podcast, is it takes guts to get out there and share your passions, but we can do it if we have that audacity within ourselves to share our messages and broadcast our voices across the internet. It's so wonderful. Joshua Stubing sent in this email saying, as a listener, the thing I am most thankful for in podcasting is the vast diversity of podcasts to fill my day with. I can pretty much find a podcast or two covering any given topic I may want to learn about. And it's awesome to have that kind of instant gratification when I used to have to wait for my favorite radio shows to come on the airwaves at their scheduled times. As a podcaster, I am most thankful for the community of podcast producers. I would never have thought to even try and produce my own podcasts, but shows like the Audacity to Podcast and Cliff Ravenscraft's podcast Answer Man have taught me so much and equipped me to be confident that I can be a successful podcast producer as well. In fact, I am launching my own podcast network in January with 4 unique shows initially that already have 3 to 4 shows recorded each. Big accomplishment there, Joshua. And he says, thanks for all you do, and specifically for the great work with the Audacity to Podcast. Wow, Joshua, that is awesome. You're jumping in. Well, you're really jumping in this. I hope you don't drown in this, but launching a network with 4 unique shows, and you've already recorded several episodes for each of them. That is amazing. You guys can check out his network, and when he announces this, at his website, which he said that the best website to go to for this is stubing.me. That's STEUBING.me. And I'll have that link to that in the show notes over at theaudacitypodcast.com/105. So big accomplishment there. A lot to be thankful for. And yeah, it's awesome to load up an iPad, an iPhone, an iPod, your computer, an MP3 player, burn it to CD, whatever. Find content for anything you're interested in. I remember when I started listening to podcasts, I thought, I wonder, are there any technology podcasts out there hosted by Christians? That probably not. So I looked, and sure enough, this was back in 2005 or 2006 when podcasting was just starting off. Sure enough, that's where I first heard John Wilkerson from the Jesus Geek. Now he hosts the Wired Homeschool, where I heard his podcast about that, and so many awesome things that I realized, wow, this is great. I can learn anything I want to. Web design podcasts. I could learn presentation podcasts or technology podcasts, podcasting podcasts, all sorts of things. You name a niche, and there's probably a podcast for it. If there isn't, that's a podcast you could start. Like it sounds like Joshua is going to be starting 4 shows that there aren't other podcasts in those niches. So I'm really eager to find out what those podcasts are. So you can check out his site, and I'll have the link again to his site and everyone else's sites and Twitter accounts that were mentioned here over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/105. Fred Castaneda also said that he's thankful for Dave Jackson and all of his podcasts, Power of Podcasting, School of Podcasting, Building a Better Dave podcast. I know Dave is also starting a couple other podcasts, like he's got it's Save My Marriage or Rescue My Marriage podcast, and others that he's working on. So awesome content there from my good friend Dave Jackson over at schoolofpodcasting.com. So check out all of these links from everyone that sent in what they're thankful for, and I'd love to still hear from you. What are you thankful for in podcasting? Please go to the show notes, theaudacitypodcast.com/105, and comment there of what you are thankful for in podcasting. Don't let this conversation stop here. Just start thinking, what has podcasting done for you? What's a piece of equipment or a piece of software you're really thankful for that you feel like you couldn't podcast without that thing? Or what has podcasting helped you with in your life or in your relationships? By the way, Dave Jackson's podcast is Healing My Marriage. The chat room just corrected me on that. Thank you. So check out the show notes and comment there over at theaudacitypodcast.com/105. Now let me tell you what I'm thankful for in podcasting. And I've previously shared things that I'm thankful for in podcasting. If you go back to theaudacitypodcast.com and listen to episode 22, so theaudacitypodcast.com/22, you can hear about the podcasters, podcasting equipment, and podcasting software that I'm thankful for. And that was an original list of mine. Now, I came up with the new list. Building on top of that, what are some of the things I'm thankful for this year, 2012, in podcasting? I came up with 4 things. Well, I've got many things, but I just wanted to limit it to 4 things. I'm thankful for the podcast listeners, you guys. I'm thankful for you who have supported my business, my decision to jump out on my own, start my own business, my freelance web design business and podcast consulting. And many of you have hired me to do stuff for you, or you've referred me or referred other people to me. And just whichever way it is, sometimes it's even, some of you are donating to me, which blows me away sometimes. And I really, really appreciate the support of what you're doing to support what I'm doing in my business and in pursuing my passions and trying to live the life that I've dreamed of living. So thank you so much for that. And even if you haven't hired me to do something for you, if you haven't referred business to me, but all you do is listen, thank you. I really appreciate that you listen, that you come back each week and faithfully listen. Sometimes I really butcher words, and sometimes I share information that may seem a little bit too in depth, or my humor might be a little odd, but I really appreciate that you come back and listen each week, and I'm so thankful for you. By the way, this reminds me of a special that I'm hosting. I don't have any digital products to sell yet. I will by this time next year, so that way I can drastically discount them for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But here's something I'm going to do instead. Since I don't have a product to sell, I have service to sell. What I'm going to do is my one-on-one consulting rate is $200 per hour for one-on-one consulting, and then I give you the video and audio recording of our consulting session afterward. But what I'm going to do is this whole week, not just Black Friday, but from November 26th through December 1st, if you would like to schedule a one-on-one consulting appointment with me, or if you schedule and prepay within this week, November 26th through December 1st, 2012, then you can have the consulting rate at 50% off. So just $100 per hour of one-on-one consulting for whatever it is that you need. If you want help with podcasting, with your website, fixing something for you on your website, anything like that. This is a way that I want to be able to have a big sale for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Cyber Week, and still give you plenty of time. So if you're interested in that, email me, feedback@theaudacitypodcast.com, and we can schedule that. And it doesn't have to be scheduled for this week. You can schedule for next month, for next year. It just needs to be scheduled. We need to schedule it during this week and close the invoice for it, and then it can be something that you'll use later on. So email me about that if you're interested. Also, second thing I'm thankful for in podcasting, a Canon T4i digital SLR camera. This is a beautiful camera. I really love this thing. I use it for still photos because I didn't really have a good camera before that. I just had an Android phone for a camera, and it takes beautiful HD video. If you've seen my podcast awards videos and some of the other videos I've recently been posting on YouTube and in the podcast feed here and there of some things, I've recorded those on the Canon T4i. And especially once I got the lighting a little bit better on some of my more recent videos, it looks really nice. It's got a touch screen on the camera, and the little screen flips around so you can be looking at what the camera is seeing while it's recording yourself. It's got special focus, a great lens, all of these things. Wonderful camera. I love this. It was a difficult decision for me to get it because of its price, because I'm not full of money. But when I started actually using it and making these videos, I could see how powerful this thing was. And I don't think my podcast would have made it into the podcast awards if it wasn't for the videos that I recorded. So I've got some other great plans for videos I'm going to do in the future, and some training products, some free videos on YouTube, and maybe a separate podcast in iTunes, maybe with some video stuff. But I really enjoy that camera. That's something that I got in this year, just in the last month or so, that I really enjoy. Number 3, my new iPhone 5, which also doubles as my iPod, because I don't only podcast a lot with several different podcasts, but I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to all of the podcasts about podcasting. I listen to all of the Once Upon a Time podcasts. I listen to several productivity podcasts. I love listening to audiobooks. And my iPhone is now my iPod instead of my iPad before. Yeah, my iPad was my iPod before. That was difficult to carry that around, and certainly not something I could just put on my hip and have headphones in. But now my iPhone 5 is my iPod for me. And I love that I can play podcasts through the podcast app or any other app of my choice and listen to them at regular speed, at 1.5 speed, at 2x speed. So it enables me to listen to more podcasts throughout the day while I'm driving, while I'm out shopping somewhere, while I'm just sitting around or doing something in the house, mowing the yard, whatever. I can listen to podcasts and consume other great content, maybe podcasts that you're doing that I listen to. I really enjoy having this because I can now consume podcasts on the go, and I can consume up to twice as many podcasts by listening to them twice as fast. And I know there are other apps out there too, like Dogcatcher for Android and Instacast, Downcast, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, and all of these things that have very similar tools on it. And then the fourth thing that I'm thankful for in podcasting and have really come to appreciate this year, 2012, is the camaraderie among other podcasters instead of competition. This is something I've really seen this year because you probably listen to several of the podcasts about podcasting. There's Cliff Ravenscraft with Podcast Answer Man, Dave Jackson with School of Podcasting, Ray Ortega with Podcasters Studio. There's Max Flight with Podcasting Passion, and Dan Lyons from Podcast Like a Radio DJ, and several other podcasts out there that are still current and still podcasting about podcasting. The Art of Podcasting, there are actually two by that same name, but those guys over at The Art of Podcasting produce great content. And now Nick Suberling over with his podcast, which is Start Talking and Recording Today. I love listening to all of these other podcasters about podcasting. And what's even better than that, I love how we have this camaraderie. I actually learned from the dictionary today that there's an extra syllable in there that's supposed to be pronounced. But this camaraderie, I love that we have, that we're not treating each other like bitter rivals, or really not even quite like competition. Technically, yes, we're competition, but I love that Dave Jackson, in one of his recent episodes of the School of Podcasting, shared a letter that he received from someone that said, I can't listen to such and such other podcast, and he kept it anonymous. But he said, this lady had said that she can't listen to this other podcast. It gets too in-depth, and she doesn't like the humor. I have a feeling she was talking about me. But she said, but I love listening to your podcast because, and she gave her reasons. And I didn't take that as an insult at all. I really do think it was about me. But I love the way that we work together. We're not afraid to reference each other. And I love watching these guys, their other content that they're producing, tweeting about it, sharing it with my audience. Dave Jackson did something with Audacity recently that I loved what he shared. It was how you could edit your podcast and twice as quickly by speeding up how fast Audacity plays back your podcast. Awesome little tip, Dave, over at School of Podcasting. I love that Ray Ortega has put together the Podcasters Roundtable of getting all of these competitors together to have very opinionated conversations about podcasting. I love working with these guys. And Dave, Ray, Dan Lyons from Podcast Like a Radio DJ, and I were on a panel at Blog World and New Media Expo in New York City. We weren't competition with each other. We build on each other. We support each other. We paint this three-dimensional object from different perspectives and different layers. And I love how we come about it from our different angles. And you may listen to one of us. You may listen to all of us. That's totally up to you. And I don't take offense if you choose to listen to someone else instead of listening to me, because we each take a different perspective and a different approach, and you may like one approach over the other. And I love how we work together and reference each other. And with Once Upon a Time as well. There are 13 Once Upon a Time podcasts. And there's some awesome things going on in that community of Once Upon a Time podcasters, of working together, mentioning each other, cross-referencing, and sending each other to different websites to get their information. I love that. And it took a while to mature into that, I think, because I did struggle with this competition aspect for a little while, a rivalry aspect in some sense. But since then, I've learned to appreciate it much more, or different perspectives. And I'm really thankful for the other podcasters who are technically my competition, but they're certainly not my rivals. And it's more like a community, going back to what Anna Sophie said. It's more like a community of podcasters. And I love what that has built for us in podcasting. So I'd love to hear from you. What are you thankful for in podcasting? Please comment on the show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/105. Let me know what you're thankful for in podcasting, your favorite equipment, favorite software, something that podcasting has done for you in your life, some way that you have really benefited from listening to other people's podcasting. Whatever. Interpret this thankfulness in podcasting however you wish. And please post in the comments over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/105 to let me and others know what you are thankful for in podcasting, and also get the links to everyone else's shows that was mentioned here in this episode. Now, I want to tell you about this really shocking thing, big shocking announcement that I'm going to share with you. And I'll explain this more in the next episode of the Audacity podcast, because I usually try to have a very Audacity-focused episode every 5 episodes, and that would fall on this episode, 105, but I'm going to push that to next week. And my big announcement is related to that. Here it is. I'm going to try leaving Audacity. No way. Yes, I'm going to try using Adobe Audition. I'm going to force myself to use Adobe Audition for a couple weeks. Now, this isn't because Audacity isn't doing the job. I have Adobe Audition as it comes with Adobe Creative Suite and the Creative Cloud membership, which is where I pay for Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, Adobe Premiere Pro, all of these other programs. And Audition comes with it. So I'm not paying any extra for it. And there are some things that I think Audition can do a bit nicer than Audacity can. And some things that could save me some time based on my workflow in podcast editing. So what I'm going to do is, effective with this episode. So if this episode sounds a bit different to you, I'd like to know what you think about the slightly different sound. Because starting with this episode of the Audacity podcast, the next several episodes of all of my podcasts will be edited inside of Adobe Audition. And this is because I want to get more familiar with that program. I want to see what its strengths and weaknesses are. I want to see if maybe it can save me time in some of the things that I do with editing audio, editing sound clips for my Once Upon a Time podcast, and certain other things like that. I think Audition might have some tools in it that might make that a little bit easier. So I'm not completely abandoning Audacity, but I'm going to give Audition a chance. And the way I'm going to do this is by forcing myself to use Adobe Audition. It's expensive software, but it comes free with the Adobe Creative Cloud membership. And I've been convinced before of certain tools when I've done this kind of forcing thing, where I've forced myself for a week or 2 weeks to use it and temporarily abandon my previous tools. Like, that's how Twitter, that's how I first got on Twitter. I made fun of Twitter in the very beginning, but then I got on it. I forced myself to use it for a week, and I loved it. Workflowy, that's how I fell in love with Workflowy, is I forced myself to use it for a week instead of my other tools, and I fell in love with it. that's how I'm going to try Audition, is I'll force myself to use it. Now, this doesn't mean I'm going to rename the Audacity to Podcast to the Audition to Podcast. No, I named the Audacity to Podcast in a way that it's not tied to the program Audacity, because Audacity is, the audacity to do something. And if you watch The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, then you know that the word audacity comes up nicely in there. And whenever I watch that, I think the Audacity to Podcast. But check out when I record episode 106, I will include some of the reasons why I think Audition might be better than Audacity, and this will be based on my experience with it. And then eventually, as I get more used to Audition and try more things, then I'll have an episode where I actually compare Audition against Audacity and which should you use. Eventually, I'll try some other programs as well and compare those. But it really comes down to use the tool that works best for you and that you can afford. Audition is not going to make my podcast suddenly better, but it might help me release episodes more quickly or produce things more quickly. So that's why I'm going to give it a try, and I will share my results with that in episode 106, or at least partial results of that, and relate it to Audacity and compare those two a little bit. So watch for that over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Please make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast to receive every episode automatically. And if you could, please leave a rating and especially written review in iTunes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/iTunes. And I would really appreciate that over there. Also, since this is a time of being thankful and the holidays coming up, Christmas and New Year's, take this time to find another podcast and tell them that you are thankful for their podcast. Tell them why you're thankful for their podcast. Leave a rating or a review for them in iTunes, especially if you could leave a 5-star review for them in iTunes. I'm sure they would be very thankful for that. But tell them why you are thankful for their podcast, what you appreciate, and they would totally love that. So be thankful in general. And also let me know if there are things that you'd like me to cover in future episodes of the Audacity Podcast. You can call 903-231-2221 or email feedback@theaudacitypodcast.com, or go to theaudacitypodcast.com and click on the Send a Voice Message tab over on the right side to record a message right from your computer. Remember to register for Blog World and New Media Expo by going to theaudacitypodcast.com/NMX to register, and I'll have a coupon code in the show notes for this episode. Get the links to everything I mentioned, all the podcasts and some of these tools I mentioned over at theaudacitypodcast.com/105. Please follow me on Twitter at @TheRamenNoodle. Please contact me if you're interested in taking advantage of my 50% off sale on one-on-one consulting. Just contact me by December 1st. And also, I have a Behringer X1832 USB mixer. It's an extra one in its box that I'm looking to sell for someone. So if you're interested in that, also email me, feedback@theaudacitypodcast.com. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you for listening. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx. Our Once Upon a Time podcast, our Clean Comedy podcast, our Productivity podcast, our Christian Movie Reviews podcast, our Christian Worldview podcast, and more to come over at noodle.mx. The Audacity to Podcast is also a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Find more at techpodcast.com and watch for our coming CES 2013 coverage over at tpn.tv.